Hi, Tony Sindelar here, and in this video, I want to talk more about teaching with teams. In my last video, I talked about forming student teams, thinking about the size of teams, the tasks you give them, how those teams are formed. But today, we want to build on that. We want to talk about how you're going to support those teams so that your learners have a positive and impactful learning experience. So, I'm a big proponent of trying to be as clear with your students about not just what you are doing, but why you are doing it and the way that you are doing it. So don't just put students in teams and hope for the best. You have to tell them why you are having them work in teams, what the purpose of having them in those teams is. If you can't explain the rationale for why you are having them work this way, maybe you should not be doing it. Remember that not all team and group activities are the same, and your students enter your course with a lot of ideas and expectations about how teams do and do not function. You need to be clear and specific about what teams will look like in your course. If student collaborations are going to be linked to graded activities, there's more stress and uncertainty on students, and you have to balance out that stress and uncertainty with structure and support. A key way you can add transparency is being very clear with your students about what they need to complete and by when. So make those deadlines and deliverables as clear as possible with reminders and information about how those deliverables will be assessed and so on. What else can you do for setting those teams up for success? You might suggest or even assign roles, a spokesperson, a timekeeper, note taker, or other roles depending on the types of tasks the team needs to take on. Do students stay in those roles as long as they're in the team, or do you want them to rotate periodically? If so, when? Are your teams collaborating during class time or outside of class? If they're collaborating outside of class, do you expect that to happen in synchronous or asynchronous formats? Does your school have a learning management system that is well suited to team projects, or are students going to use their own tools? Are they going to use Zoom, Slack, Google Docs, Dropbox, GitHub? Depending on the task, you don't have to necessarily dictate what students use, but suggesting how, when, and where they are communicating with each other gives teams a starting point for learning to work together. Next, students should talk about how they are going to function as a team. They might want to put down some guidelines that they are going to agree to, which could become something as official as a team charter. Some students really struggle with this, and maybe that's okay, but maybe you want to give them a template for a team charter to start with versus that scary blank page. I've talked a lot about structure and all this behind the scenes work, but we also might want to stop and think about how can we make teamwork fun? Working with other people can be stressful, and students worry about how much they can rely on each other, what they can expect from their peers, how to act in their groups, and so on. But at the same time, working with others can be deeply rewarding and lead to powerful learning. So what are you going to do to try and make it fun? Everyone's had to do an icebreaker, and most of them are super corny, but they are a good way to get students talking and sharing. Name and major is not exciting information to share, so find some icebreaker activity for them to do with their teams to get those conversations flowing. What about team names? Rather than just Team 3, can they be named after something? You could ask them to pick from a category related to your course topic. Maybe it's authors or historical events, locations, or give them a carte blanche to pick a name that means something to them. Maybe you want to go a step further and ask them to create a team logo or banner or flag, some kind of visual iconography associated with their team. These tasks can seem a little silly and goofy, but they actually play an important role because you're getting your learners to collaborate on low-stakes collaboration. The team logo isn't the important learning outcome. It's what they figure out about how they are going to communicate and collaborate together as a team to accomplish that task that's the outcome. The logo is just a thing that happens along the way to that path. These low-stakes tasks let students learn about each other and build trust, which sets them up for taking on more complicated tasks as they go further as a team. So at this point, you've done a lot to set these teams up for success, but the other thing you need to be prepared to do is check in. If a team is struggling, you want to know about it early. Depending on the type of struggle, you might let students work through it, or you might need to intervene and give students support structure, or, worst case scenario, shuffle up team membership as a last resort. It's a good idea to do some kind of organized check-in at the halfway point of any significant project that you assign a team. That might be a survey or an in-class reflection activity. At the end of the course, you should have a summative assessment of how the team worked together. Example questions for a midpoint check-in might include a series of Likert questions about satisfaction, what is working well with the group, asking a student to think about how they are contributing to the group, identifying what the group is struggling with, and where are places that they might try and improve collaboration and communication. The goal of these questions is to get students reflecting and hopefully communicating with their team members more directly about how things could be improved. If you have a course with a significant amount of teamwork, it's important to have some kind of assessment at the end of the term or semester where you gather data about how teams did. This gives you some behind the scenes info on how students work, and students appreciate it as they see it as somewhat of a stopgap for accountability with their team members. In an ideal world, all team members are good, responsible contributors, but many students have concerns about team members who might be slacking. My experience is that most students don't actually need the opportunity to complain about peers, but appreciate the accountability embedded in the process. So, your summative team evaluation might ask students to describe what worked well, what were the strengths of the group, reflect on how they did on assignments. They might do a peer evaluation of each member of the team, and of course, depending on the information you receive on this survey, you may need to make changes about how grades are distributed for any collaborative activity. I hope you found these ideas helpful for thinking about the next time you have students working in teams. Check out Tony's Teaching Tips for more teaching advice and strategies. Goodbye.